Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Very excited today. We have Bessi Graham joining us. Bessi, thanks for coming on the show today and chatting with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I love your accent. Yes, and we're super excited to have our audience that will be joining us to, listen to the podcast. And as always, super excited to hear your feedback and for you to share questions with us, once you've listened to our show today. So let's take a minute and just share with you a little bit about Bessi. She's an award-winning entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience working with business owners, governments, and large funding bodies to bring doing good and making money back together. I want to repeat that because I think that's so important. It's about doing good and making money back together. So from grassroots of sitting in the dirt, working with business owners in the Pacific Islands to the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, Bessi has seen it all and brings an unparalleled perspective on what makes change happen. That's so important, especially where we are today in this world and the changes that we need to see take place. So working with people who have made it but haven't found their fulfillment, she helps them put their time, talent, and treasure to work in ways that will align with their values and allow them to create a legacy that they can be proud of. Bessi teaches people to quiet the noise of the demands and opinions of others and hear their own voice more clearly so they contribute from a place of authenticity. She removes the frustration and pressure that comes from living someone else's idea of success and replaces it with a sense of flow and fulfillment that can only come when you tap into that fullness of who you are and who you are becoming. Wow, Bessi, that's a big step for a lot of people, and love being in flow and fulfillment, because I think we spend too many years doing things that we don't love and we get caught in that rat race. And I know we're going to talk about that today. So thank you so much for being here and imparting your wisdom with us. So let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about how you arrived at where you are today. What got you to this place?
Yeah, well, in that introduction, you've tapped on to many of the main aspects of my work over the last 20 years. And so it really has been this journey of trying to figure out how we could bring the best of different sectors or approaches rather than feel like we come into a position or a view where we say, oh, this is government's role and they play there. This is business's role and they play there. And this is where philanthropy or granting happens and we try to do good. That never felt satisfying to me. And so the interesting piece that has sort of led to where I am today is I originally spent the bulk of my career then working with people to try to figure out this aspect of doing good and making money back together, but from the perspective of working with those who had a social or an environmental core to what they were doing. And almost every single one of them lacked the commercial skills or approach to figure out what was the business model that would underpin that. And so I was working with them to try to say, okay, how do we wrestle with this? How do we take what it is you care about and you're trying to do in the world, but build into that a sustainable business model? What would that look like? And so that meant that I worked with an extraordinary both number and diversity of different organisations across the world, but very heavily in the Pacific Islands and in Australia. And that was fascinating and allowed me to do all of those pieces of better understanding how hard it actually is to do good and to play out those things that we want to see change happen in the world, but also to really tighten those skills around the collaboration that's required if you want to bring government with its certain roles, philanthropy with its roles, private investors and their requirements and demands, the business and commercial side, and then actually trying to run programs or interventions that were addressing really big problems in the world. So it was fascinating from that perspective of learning very intense, very big lessons in many projects. But where I am now, and the focus which you spoke a little bit about at the end there of working with business leaders who have made it in terms of, you look successful, you tick all the boxes, but there's then that realization that you actually don't feel fulfilled. The satisfaction isn't there. And that has become more and more of my focus, because as I've done this work, I have seen just how powerful business's role is, how much that a business is already having a massive impact in the world. And what I've realized is that if I can help shift that mindset and change the way business leaders actually think about their role and how they make decisions and run their businesses, that is how we are going to rapidly shift and change so many of these entrenched problems. And so that has been the shift, which now for this next chapter of my career, I'm heavily focused on working with those business leaders to really change the way we do business and bring back together these ideas of doing good and making money.
Yeah, so many things you just shared there that I think are so important with regards to, first of all, just helping people understand that you can do good, you can make money. Like it can all go together. It doesn't mean you have to be, one extreme to the other. And I think oftentimes we get caught up in that rat race, and believe that, it's to your point, the belief system, the mindset that prevents us from being able to do that. And doing good is so important, in what your footprint is on the world versus just what it does for you. Right. And so love that you're spending a lot of energy and time and attention in helping people with this shift. So I'm curious about your thoughts on, how to avoid living in someone else's idea of success. And I know that's a big focus for you. And, when I read this about you, I was like, oh my gosh, like I've spent most of my life like trying to please your parents, or, how they define success is not necessarily how I define success. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah. I think that it's a really common experience. So none of us is alone in having that sort of tension or finding that there are points where we have fallen into that trap of running after something that we later realize was actually an external sense of what success was, and it wasn't our own. I've found that there are two really helpful ways to begin an exploration that gets you to a place where you can try to avoid that playing out for you, where you realize you're living someone else's idea of success. Mm. And they both come down to really finding clarity. And I think that is a piece that can often be challenging for business leaders, entrepreneurs, those who are out there, and the tendency is usually towards action and jumping in and just running with it. The old saying that so many entrepreneurs use around, building a plane while you're flying it, all of those pieces that seem exciting and are tendencies or preferences for people like me that tend to operate in that way. And so the clarity piece is really important, because what it allows you to do is tap into these pieces that I think are deeply human. So the two places that I like to get people to find clarity on are firstly your own values, because the piece that you need to be grounded in, you need to have somewhere that you can keep coming back to as that touchstone, as that, okay, is what I'm doing connected to who I actually am? Am I behaving in a way that is aligned with these values? Am I, you need that touchstone. You need to be grounded in something. And I think the best piece to be grounded in and to have clarity on are your values. So there's a grounded in your values clarity that you need to get to. Then the other part of being human is that we need to feel like we're making progress. We need to know what we're moving towards. We don't want to just be stuck in one place. Part of life and the piece that gives us that energy is the sense of movement or progress, our evolution and growth. And so the second piece of clarity is around your vision. So that is about, what is it you want to be part of? What are you trying to do? What's the purpose of all of this action and effort that you're putting in? And so if you can have clarity on those two places, grounded in your values, moving towards your vision, then that allows you to start to have a little bit more confidence that this design of your life is coming from a place of knowledge of self. because we have to be able to really describe what is success to me. So your point, it may be that we're still really unconsciously living out a version of success that was put on us by parents or teachers or lecturers at university who said, this is what you're aiming for, like this is the goal. So those pieces are about then the reflection on what is success to me, what would that actually look like, feel like, really describe it in quite a lot of detail, go into that, whether you like to journal or you just want to think about it while you're walking. Think about that aspect of what is success for you. And I think the other piece that I always talk to the leaders that I work with about is, as you're doing that, whether it's around framing what success is or looking at any of these components of the way you're operating and how you're showing up, there are 3 questions that are really useful to ask yourself as that sense check. I like alliteration, so they all start with S. They all start with S. So
okay, perfect.
The first is to ask yourself, is this way that I'm showing up, is my definition of success, is it coming from a place of being self-aware? So that's that piece of like, is this mine? Have I really taken the time to be aware of what I need and want? The second piece is to ask yourself, is it sustainable? This comes back to that knowledge of self piece, because what might be energizing for one person can be incredibly draining for another.
Of course. Yeah.
And so we need to ask that question, and we need to look at it and say, okay, if this is a marathon, not a sprint, is this actually sustainable? Is what I'm framing as that goal I'm going after or the targets I'm wanting to hit, what success is that life-giving? Is it going to be sustainable for me? And the third piece is around saying, is it strategic? And what I mean by that is, I love the saying around strategy is saying no to good things. So part of what builds on that approach that's self-aware, it's sustainable, and it's strategic is when you've been thinking about your version of success, are you getting comfortable with the idea that you're going to have to say no to some good things? Like there's lots of great things you could do. There are lots of wonderful goals you could have or ideas of what success is. But if you try to do everything, you won't do anything well. And so what does that end up doing for you? So they're kind of 3 of the pieces that when we then get into, we've done that reflection ourselves and been conscious of describing what success is to us. Just running through those questions, is it coming from self-awareness? Is it sustainable? And is it strategic? Can be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, a couple of things you just said there, my mind went to a few different areas. Like one, that person who's not sure, that's a tricky one, right? Like even thinking of a young person, when you mentioned university, I was thinking about, kids trying to determine at a young age what's next, right? And so finding that clarity is tough because they haven't had those experiences yet. And so, even the questions you're asking about how do you define success? What does that look like for you? Is it sustainable? What's the strategy look like? Those are super important. The other thing I heard you say that I think is really important is keeping it focused and always going back and asking yourself those questions, right? Because so many times, you and I both work with companies, we work with leaders, and so often what I see, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is companies will try to do 100 things, right? And so they're the master of nothing. And you try to help them understand that pick 3 to 5 and really focus your energy around mastery of this so that you can measure success. You can see what that success is looking like. I think that's such an important aspect. And I don't know, what are you seeing, Bessi, when it comes to like organizations and how they're tying that success together?
Yeah, that piece that you identified of the desire to want to do everything is across the board. It's in the business area, it's in philanthropy. I always laughed when you would talk to a philanthropist and say, so what are the areas that you're funding? And they said, we've got some very specific thematics. And you say, great, what are they? Education, health, environment. And you're like, there's nothing niche or specific about that. They're the 5 largest areas of challenge in the world, right? So that is, I think, again, deeply human. There's almost this sense of, ooh, but that's good, and that's good, and that's good, and I want to do that. But we need to come back to that definition of strategic. Being strategic is saying no to good things. You can look at all of the different opportunities and say, I could build a business model around doing that. I could build my life around seeking to achieve these things. And that could be a good thing to do. But it is then having enough of the tools and filters to figure out, as you said, what are those 3, 4 things that actually I want to focus on and commit my attention to. Because we've all been in that situation. And I think much of this conversation, we said at the beginning, this overarching idea of doing good and making money and bringing them back together. Now, this is about not being one-dimensional, not having that mindset that says you have to pick one. But we are equally saying here, and this is always part of the joy of leadership and having to sit with the awkwardness of things that seem like contradictions. But we want to not be one-dimensional. We want to take in different perspectives, but we equally don't want to go too far with that and end up trying to do everything. So it is this dance, and it's why clarity is so important. That's why I said that at the beginning of for any leader working to drill to clarity and then be able to communicate that to your customers, your employees, your shareholders, whatever it is that are the key stakeholders you engage with. That is really important, because what I find is that when we have that clarity and we're able to then actually make really aligned decisions very quickly because we know what to judge an opportunity on, then it leads to this situation where actually these things become mutually reinforcing. We start to move quicker in the direction we want. We are able to assess, is this working or not? Because we know what we're gauging. Yeah. If you haven't worked to get that clarity, it's very difficult to know whether, okay, are we trending in the direction of where we want to go? Should we keep doing more, spend more time, money, effort in this direction, or do we need to redesign and refine our approach? So it's that piece of, by doing this work and by thinking in this way, you actually are then able to have that really lovely self-reinforcing loop created between the clarity actually leading to increasing the chance of getting better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Love it. Okay. That's great. And just, another thing I want to highlight there is when you said about someone's values, like I think people underestimate the power of that, not only for the organization and what the values of the organization is, but as individuals as well. That's a great checkpoint to say, am I out of alignment? Right. And because that can help us get back on track, or to your point, when you need to say no, it's asking that, like, is this, if I do this, is that going to take me out of alignment with my core beliefs and values? So I'm really glad that you highlighted that one. I think that one's super, super important. Yeah.
Yeah. The aspect around values, and as you said, there are components where we need to get to clarity around personal values, and then there are the aspects of how that plays out in a business and what the organization's values are. And I mean, that's a whole podcast we could do, drilling into to values. It's a massive area. It's very important, and usually it's covered in a superficial way. And when that happens, you don't get the power of what clarity of your values actually gives you if you drill to them being meaningful. There's a whole bunch of different types of values. And if people want to read a little bit more, my favorite thinker in this space is Patrick Lencioni, and he describes multiple different types of values. But for a business, if you're trying to get to this piece of getting that connection and buy-in where people are clear on what those values are and how that lines up for them, 2 of the types of values that are really important to get clarity on are the core values of the organization and the aspirational values. And the reason why I draw both of those out is that often we fall into a trap of naming something as a core value that's actually an aspirational value. And
Love that.
creates a disconnect. That actually makes your customers, your employees trust you less because they do not see a connection between what you're saying is a core value, which is meant to be something that's already present and deeply part of how you behave.
Yes.
And your behavior. They're saying, hang on, there's a disconnect here. You're saying this is a core value, but I don't see it reflected in any of your behavior or decision making. And so we need to at least get clarity on those two different things and make sure we're naming things appropriately. You can identify something. So a distinction with an aspirational value is that when you project forward to that vision you've now got clarity on of what you want to be part of, what you want to do, what does success look like. An aspirational value is something that you identify where you say, in order to achieve that, in order to be successful, there are values we're going to need to have that are not yet present, but that we are going to have to actively cultivate. And that is a powerful way to name them. When you name it in that way and you're able to articulate to your team, to your customers, this is where we're headed. And we know that we don't yet have these things as just the automatic way we behave or how we think or how we come at problems, but we're going to need to develop them in order to succeed. Now, instead of distrusting you, people get excited because they say, wow, you actually have that self-awareness. You know it's not present, but you've identified and explained to me where we're going. I'm excited by that. And now I want to get on board with figuring out how we actually get these aspirational values in place. So the core values are those pieces, that touchstone I spoke about before. You're grounded in that. You come back to that and you say, are we in alignment? Are we behaving in the way that connects to those core values? But by articulating aspirational values, you really help get people on board with what needs to change and occur for you to succeed in that way that you've articulated as being important to you as an organization.
I love it. And that's a great check and balance for ensuring that you are staying in alignment with what you currently do and who you are and what you intend to strive for. Love it. So, one of the things that I know is really important to you, and I want to tie this back together, is how businesses can be this positive agents for change in the world, right? And so how does one create those models, those strategies that can bring good and making money back together?
It comes back to that word we've said a few times, the mindset word. So it is something that does begin with questioning and thinking about these pieces of doing good and making money and saying, okay, when I hear you say that, I might initially go, yeah, of course you can. I believe that. But then are there deep held unconscious often beliefs that you have or discomforts you have that actually play out to show that really you think of these things as two distinct categories? We see all the time in society these questions or pushback around, okay, well, how much money is the CEO of that nonprofit earning? And how, we
Very
ask
true.
these questions as if, okay, if you're running a major organization and we ignore the legal structure of it, there's complexity and skill sets that are required that if it was a for-profit, we wouldn't question that you were being paid at that level. But somehow, because you chose to do good, you have no right to make money, right? So these pieces are just apparent in the comments people make, in the judgments they make, that actually they have not brought those things back together. They do see them as distinct. So that first piece is to start to go, oh, these things aren't mutually exclusive. They can coexist. And in fact, we can build a stronger, more robust organization if it has both, whether you're coming at this from the nonprofit charitable sector or the commercial space. The model of your organization in terms of your business model will be stronger if you bring both into play. So that's the first piece, the mindset shift. I think the next aspect is around realizing that we need to stop thinking about doing good as external to the business. So even when someone goes on this this journey with me and is excited and wants to use their business as this platform to have a positive impact in the world, almost all of the time, the first place their mind goes to is that, great, because if we can make this business run really well and be profitable, we can give more money away. So the good is still sitting outside the business. They're still saying the business will make money. Then with that money, I will give it to an organization separate to me that is doing good. Or they kind of play out these components of what their team could do, or they could give their time to another organization. Now, those things aren't bad. Again, this isn't a black and white situation here. That can be part of your strategy of how you do good, can be through giving donations of percentages of profits or giving your time in a pro bono capacity to issues you care about. That's great. That can be part of that portfolio, if you like, of how you do good. But the piece we're trying to shift here in terms of that mindset is to bring good back inside the business and say, if I said to you, there's a constraint here, your business is only ever going to break even. You're never going to have a profit to give away. If that was the constraint, just by existing and running the business, is the world a better place? Have you done something positive and contributed? That's a helpful kind of thinking experiment or piece to play with, to go, okay, I've got to force myself to come back inside the business and say, how are we going to do good with our core business? So that shift of not seeing it as external is really important. And it's one of the things I love doing the most to help people think about what can that look like in your particular business to do good and make money.
That's awesome.
The third kind of piece, again, of something we need to stop doing is about seeing doing good as being something you will do one day. So we so often have these things of like, when we reach this level of revenue or this level of profit, or when we sell the business or retire, then I will do good, then I will give back. And we need to sort of shift that to instead looking at, what are the decisions I have control over? Where am I spending money inside the business? And start to see it as an approach that says you can actually do good now. And the business is the platform to do that with.
Love that. Love that. That's so important. And often that is a miss within organizations, or there'll be a particular committee in the organization that does it, but it's not tied to the entire organization. And so there's still that disconnect that you were talking about, how it lives outside of, or it's separate from. And I really love what you shared there. And so I'm watching our time, because like so much great information. I want to just kind of move away from that just a little bit, because a post that you had quoted just recently captured my attention. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts about how we live between the act of awakening and the act of surrender. Like when I read that, I had goosebumps and I was like, wow, that's really powerful. So I'd love to just explore that with you a little bit and hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think this to me comes back to what is really a both and mindset. So I talk a lot to people about, rather than having an either or approach where you're saying I have to choose one, what would it look like to say I'm looking to design something that is both and? When you take that quote and you talk about the aspect of awakening and surrender, they to me fit in that category of sitting with these ideas that two things that might seem like contradictions can be equally true. So there is a sense of agency, or almost your control over the things where you're saying, okay, now I'm really consciously thinking about where I want to be growing or changing in that awakening sense. So we can proactively say that's something that we can chase after and prioritize in our life. But there are also these components where there's so much that is out of our control. And so learning to surrender into that and sit with these two places of kind of dancing between, Where am I consciously stepping into and awakening and being open and curious? And where am I then saying, oh, I actually don't have the control or the power here, and I'm going to surrender to things that I don't fully understand. That, I think, for leaders is a beautiful thing to learn to do more and to sit with. I often talk about a quote that a lecturer of mine used when I was studying, which was that to lead in the 21st century, you have to have a stomach for disequilibrium. And this idea of both and, of sitting with contradiction, of being comfortable with paradox, is part of leadership, because you are going to find yourself over and again in situations where you say, yes, this is true and is important, but equally so is this. And so how will we make decisions? How will we not get frozen or paralyzed in analyzing information, but learn to say, yep, we know enough, we've tested enough, and now we're going to surrender and just move into action, even though we don't have all the answers. That piece is a critical skill for a leader to have, to be able to, I often like to think about it as, we zoom out and have that sense of vision. But when you're big picture and in the future conceptualizing things, you can't possibly know all the levels of detail that you know about today. And so you have to be able to be clear at the level of a vision in the appropriate level of detail, but then say, all I actually need to know is what to do next, and then trust that myself and my team have the skills and experience to figure it out as we go. But next step is clear. Then move and keep tracking. Are we trending in the direction of where we want to go? And that piece is going to require you to sit with this awakening and surrender all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, as you were saying that, I was just thinking about all the complexities that leaders are faced with, especially in today's world. And, just the pandemic was a great example of how people have had to, be more agile than ever, because we didn't know, right? And so we just had to trust that we were making the best decisions given the information we had at the time. So I really loved that quote, and it caught my attention, and I was like, okay, we need to just, really bring that to the forefront and talk about that. Like, leadership is not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. Because you're constantly, I love the term you use throughout about it's this dance between so many different aspects of, what you're doing. And so leadership is it's not easy, but it's also very rewarding. And so when you can accept and surrender and have that awareness of, how you can navigate going forward, that's a really powerful place to be. So Bessi, I know we have to wrap up here, and I'm just curious, like, what would be 2 things that, or even 1 is fine, that you really want to make sure our audience walks away with today, something they can take and implement, that would help them set themselves up for, navigating tomorrow, the next day.
Yeah, I think that if we come back to that aspect around the shift to seeing doing good as something that happens inside the business, I would just encourage people to have the starting point for that exploration to come down to the very simple pieces around, where are you spending money currently, and what decisions are you making? Because if you do that and keep coming back to that, you won't fall into the trap of continually externalizing the good. You'll say, oh, okay, we actually spend the bulk of our money on our team. That's interesting. That might be a natural place for us to start thinking about the impact we're having. What is the well-being of our staff? Are we sending people home incredibly stressed and anxious, and it's having negative impacts on their family life and their mental health? Okay, well, that is actually our responsibility. We've created the culture and the conditions that are having a negative flow-on effect. We don't want that to happen, and it's within our control to change it. So those pieces of where are we spending money as an entry point? Where do we have decisions that we have either control or influence over? How could we do that differently? In that category, it can be the components of where do you procure from? What kinds of companies are you buying from, or who is in your supply chain? What are the questions you're asking there? You are already having an impact. The question is it the kind of impact you want? Is it the kind of impact you're proud of? So start with what you are already doing, what you have control and influence over. And that way you won't get overwhelmed. You won't end up feeling like, well, I can't possibly change that massive issue, so I won't do anything. So that would be, if there's one thing, start where you are and where you have control and influence.
Love it. Love it. That's brilliant. And I think that's so important. Oh, lovely. Wow. It has been such a pleasure having you join us today. So thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing and imparting your wisdom. I think that's a really powerful message in helping people, really connect again with doing good and being able to make money, and recognizing the importance of bringing it internally, not keeping it on the outside. And, having spent 30 years in my career in, environments, corporate environments, that's a very natural way of thinking. And so this is so important, and creates more engagement with your teams. So love that you've shared that. And I want to take a moment and thank our audience. Thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to, hear Bessi's story and the work that she's doing and bringing to the world. And, my challenge is looking at yourself and the companies that you work for, and what good are you bringing into the world? We'd love to hear that. So reach out. You can reach out to either one of us. And Bessi, maybe just share how people can reach you, whether, it's Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, the best place to go is to my website, bessigraham.com, and we can share a link. From there, you'll be able to then connect directly with me or check out the podcast, depending on what you're after.
Nice. Excellent. So that's a great place you can reach Bessi. And we know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to. So we're grateful that you pick Women in Leadership Talk as your place to, meet amazing women and storytellers and sharing their experiences of what they've gone through or what they are doing to impact the world. And if you're curious about your own leadership and how you're showing up in the world, please go on our website at WIL Empowered, that's 1L, and take our leadership quiz. It'll give you a lot of insight as to how you're showing up as a leader. So I want to thank you. And Bessi, thank you so much for being here. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone on our next podcast. Take care, everyone. Have a super day.